Real-time Sovryn is go.
Hello, I'm Dr. Brian Sovryn, best known for his roles in Fisting of the North Star, Xanadu You All Night Long, and of course, the tragically unreleased video game sequel, Halo 4 BDSM, in which I played the role of John 69. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you just saw all the poster work for those films. Just kidding, we couldn't show that on YouTube. But what we can talk about on YouTube is what is some of the hottest news in the tech world. Now, it's also in the entertainment world because really these two worlds have become inextricably linked. They are bound at the hip today for varying reasons. We'll probably get into some of that. That being the entertainment world and the tech world, of course. But this is coming out of another linkage with the fast food world. None other than Chick-fil-A. Now, this is getting a lot of attention and a lot of news, and certainly it's part of the reason that I am talking about it, even though I have other takes than I think what I am reading and hearing mostly in response to this. And why is the response to this? And it's a great question to ask, because if McDonald's came out with some kind of streaming service, and hell, they might already have one, if they just came out with some kind of streaming video service, I don't think anybody would really bat an eye. They'd just say, well, of course they would. They're McDonald's. They do everything. And really, it's insane, the things they do. But because this is Chick-fil-A, because this is an openly Christian company, to the point that they don't open their stores on Sunday unless that rule changed somewhere, somehow. I don't know. It might as well. They got the day wrong. Sorry, folks. Jew here. Sabbath is on a Saturday, and you can find it in every language around the world far older than English. But moving on from that, so they may be wrong about which day to worship on. They might be wrong to worship at all. I would say yes. But while they're wrong about that, are they wrong about creating their own streaming service? And this is what a lot of people, again, it seems like such a surprise, to come from a company like Chick-fil-A, who, certainly it's well known. And in fact, it's partly its religious stance is honestly the best marketing it's ever done. And they've had some decently clever marketing, at least somewhat differentiated, to like save the cows, have a chicken or something like that. That's horrible, but okay, whatever. I say save the chickens too, but regardless, well, maybe I don't say save the chickens. You should read the works of Dr. Greger to learn more about the chicken holocaust. Okay, moving on from that. They've had some pretty good marketing. Their religious stance, however, is clearly their best. And living up to it, not just in it's not just lip service, right? Again, closing a fairly popular food chain for one day of the week is unheard of, not just in the business world. For sure in the, in the restaurant business, that's unheard of. But I think for a lot of businesses, frankly, that's unheard of. It's almost like having bankers hours or something, and I don't mean bankers in England that has just some of the most tremendous fish that I've ever seen. Fish fillets. Anyway, or fish and chips, right? That's what it's all about. Okay. So what makes this, again, interesting is, they have come forthright with the announcement saying that this is going to be family-friendly content. I don't think they've gone so far as to say that it's religious, unless there have been some other interviews that I've missed. But you can tell that that's going to be a part of it. And what's really interesting to me is, because I don't think this is just a marketing stunt. I think they're actually going to pull this off. Okay. And I think they can pull it off. And you may be saying, yeah, but wait a minute, Stallion. No way. Streaming is a failed model at this point in time. You have entire studios or networks even shutting down or consolidating, or taking down shows to get the tax break, like Disney Plus and Willow, or whatever. You're right that those things are occurring, but here's the thing, okay? The successful streaming services that probably aren't going to go away anytime soon. Let's talk about those for a second. Obviously, the elephant in the room is Netflix, okay? Netflix is the streaming service. Do I like it? No, it annoys the hell out of me. And I don't have, in fact, I famously canceled my Netflix subscription way before that was cool. I mean, now I think we're at the point of apathy where people are just like, yeah, of course I have a Netflix subscription. Or it gets wrapped in with their phone bill automatically. You know, I know what was T-Mobile or some, mobile operators and MVNOs, like they offer those. Anyway, Netflix is it. Okay. But Netflix is so it that the content it makes by and large is meaningless because I mean there's so much of it you can't watch it all. And that so much comment is so much of it comment is something I want to try and address later on if we have time. So, link is in the show notes for this story, by the way, whether you're watching this on YouTube, you're listening to it on Spotify, or you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts or Pocket Casts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. But the link is in the show notes for the story if you want to dig in a little bit deeper. But the main thing I want to get to are some of my alternative takes. But to get to your point, your question of, wait a minute, these things are failing. Okay, Netflix doesn't appear to be failing. I mean, it seems like they're burning money right and left, but it doesn't appear to be failing, or at least it doesn't appear to be going anywhere. And I do think that in 2025, Netflix is going to get a major boon of subscribers as they have, made a exclusive contract with the WWE and, their parent company TKO, which of course also owns UFC. That doesn't mean I think UFC is going to disappear from some of its outlets, but it's certainly things would be trending in that direction. And, wrestling fans, especially today when things have basically left the PG era behind in wrestling. Not to give you a history lesson in wrestling, but when you've left the PG era behind, you have a lot of old school wrestling fans who number in the millions that are going to start watching again, and they want to see what's up. And hey, they already have a Netflix subscription, so why won't they? Or, hey, a Netflix subscription is really cheap and I can watch it anytime. I'm going to jump on this. Now, is Netflix going to take advantage of like live content and everything? Oh, of course they are, especially with wrestling. And live content is one of the few ways that a company can actually seem to save itself, or a streaming video company can save itself, because like you have to be subscribed, you have to be there. It's not something that you watch later. So that said, the streaming services that can actually compete with Netflix, it's pretty clear who and what they are. They are companies that their streaming service is actually kind of a value add. Okay, it's something they do on the side. They may take it very seriously, but it's something that they can do on the side because they make money through other things. So, for example, Amazon Prime, right? Prime Video is not going anywhere. Why? Because Amazon makes plenty of money, as a shopping destination, but then also, just think of everything that Amazon does. Most importantly, AWS, which actually makes more money by exponentially more money, leaps and bounds more money than any other aspect of Amazon. Okay, so Prime Video doesn't have to go anywhere, and if anything, Prime Video is in even better shape and is, by some people's metrics, the true competitor to Netflix because it can actually host its own content and stream it, because this is one of the most expensive parts of this whole proposition is you have to host all of this video. And that's a question, or that's an issue we're going to address with Chick-fil-A, because if there's any point of failure with all of this, or any point of concern with this entire idea on Chick-fil-A's part, in my opinion, that's the one. Who's your CDN? Who's your content delivery network? How is this going to work for you? Because that could get expensive. Even though I'm sure part of the solution is they know that their product is going to be decently niche. So that's it. You have Amazon Prime. Doesn't need the money that Prime makes. It's a value add to get you into Prime subscriptions, of course, and then even into earlier this year they tagged on another $4 if you want to remove all ads. Money hand over fist. So the other one, of course, is Apple, who also, depending upon the day, is the most valuable company in the world. In the trillion, and soon to be, I'm sure, trillions of dollars, if not already. So as the most valuable company in the world, making all of their money off of Apple services, as well as selling iPhones and every other thing in the button, whatever that happens to be. Okay. They can run Apple TV as a value add. They don't have to worry about Apple TV making money, right? Because it's just a way to get, just like Amazon Prime, to get more people to subscribe either to Apple One, which batches in all of their features, or, just to get them into Apple services in some form or fashion. All right. So Apple TV, not going anywhere. Apple TV could honestly, as Amazon as well could consume like some of these other struggling, failing streaming services, right? Perhaps the most prominent struggling service would be Paramount Plus. I don't think Disney Plus. I mean, we rarely find out numbers, but we can tell kind of what's happening with their content strategy, what's going on. Of course, Paramount, Studios shut down this year, but with Disney Plus, with the abject failure and flaming piece of shit that is the Acolyte, that's pointing at things along with, just the lack of confidence that they are removing shows from the network just to get the tax breaks on it. Now, you wouldn't do that if your streaming service was, doing insane money. It's not. Okay. And we could get into Hulu and a bunch of others, and some of them are a little more niche and might be doing okay, but they're also not like these general content providers. And I think Hulu's actually going to be hurting. Well, actually, a lot of that went to Peacock. Peacock's another one where they canceled that Battlestar Galactica show. Why did they cancel it? I mean, we hear rumors that the scripts were very rough and replacing showrunners and whatever else, but ultimately, I think it comes down to it just would have been too expensive to do. And Peacock's not making that money, and especially losing their WWE contract, they're in trouble. So Chick-fil-A is entering this trying time for the entertainment industry. And let's be clear on this. This is a very trying time for the entertainment industry. They're figuring things out as they go. Really. I mean, they don't know what to do. And their best strategy. Okay, we're going into a time, I really want to talk more about Chick-fil-A as well here, because again, they're walking into this environment. But I want to talk about some of the things that I think are really happening in the entertainment industry as well. And for the first time in my life, I've come to the conclusion, and I know I'm not the only one, I've come to the conclusion that movies, as in like a movie, you go and see, whatever, motion pictures that you've experienced for the past 100 years or so. You went to the theater to go see them, or even TV movies that you watched on TV. Take your pick. Knight Rider 2000, kick-ass one like that, or who knows. Okay. But the movie, this, one piece, 2.5 hour, sometimes now 3 hours plus. Of course, that's how movies used to get made. They're all seemingly like 3-hour appointments, and I fucking love them. But anyway, that format, the format that made people like George Lucas, Scorsese, Spielberg, Tarantino, go down the list, okay? Ridley Scott, whoever. The format that made them, I think, is dying. I'm not saying it's going to go away in like the next year, but, in the next maybe 10 years, after, I don't know, James Cameron's Avatar is done, I think this is going to become an exceptionally rare thing, if not obsolete. Now, why do I say that? That might come off as a very shocking statement to you. Why am I saying this? The reason I am saying this is a movie. Okay, so first off, movies aren't exactly, especially even this year, with big hits like Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine. I mean, Inside Out 2 was actually the number one film so far this year, and it didn't even break $1 billion. I think it did over half. It did over $500 million. It did like 600 million, something like that. But it didn't even break $1 billion. As to where for the past 15 years, there's always been at least one movie, usually more than that, that has broke $1 billion in ticket sales. So we're seeing that decline. Okay, and it's not because of 2020. It is not because of that. That's not what's going on here. What's going on here is, people, of course, I've talked about this sometimes on Sovereign Tech recently, but people don't want to spend, 50 to 100. I mean, and if you have a family, like if you have kids, multiple kids even, going to the movies is, I mean, that's going to cost you what, $200? I mean, even in the cheap seats in the cheap towns, $25 a head. That's might be lowballing it. Hell, it might be 30 now. I don't know. If you're in a big city, you know how much it costs. Some of these tickets are 50, 60, $70 per person. Not even IMAX. That's not sustainable, especially in an economy such as the one we're in 2024. People, it's not a sustainable model to sell tickets at that price. People can't pay it. People aren't going to pay it. I mean, I haven't been to the movies in months because I'm myself. I said the same thing. I'm like, oh, that's enough. Like you can't charge these prices. Like I'm not going to pay for this. And part of the reason I'm willing to go through that is, well, shit. I have a pretty good entertainment system, in the house, and I can buy movies on disc for $20 to $30, dependent. I can have everybody come over and see it. I can watch it multiple times, and I have a fine theater system. I mean, there's some movies that, over the years have been made to where you've got to see it in theaters. You have to get shook, by it. I think a lot of war films like that. And I understand that it's not always replicable, but nobody is making films replicable really for the movie theater other than, say like a Christopher Nolan, with Oppenheimer or something like that. Those are the rare occasions. But even then, when he said that he was making it for that, I can tell you as somebody who's watched that movie multiple times on different screen formats, that does not need to be on an IMAX screen. I said that when I first reviewed the movie. It's not necessary. Okay. So there's nobody really, even though people want to bring up Christopher Nolan, no, there's nobody really making films, for the theater environment. Why? Because the studios are like, look, this has got to end up on streaming. Look, this has got to end up here and there. It's going to be on a phone screen. Most people are going to watch it on a phone screen or whatever. And so, they're thinking that way. Even though you have kind of the old stable of directors that are still trying to, push the theater experience as a glamour format. People aren't going for it. And I don't have to put the research up on the screen. I mean, I should use this hand, but it's out there. Okay. So there's that. The other part of it is then, okay, so the primary place that is like seemingly able to make some kind of money, right, is streaming. Okay. And ultimately this all comes down to investors, right? Yeah, sure. Okay. So the theaters were doing really well. We were doing those $1 billion movies and all that for quite a few years now. And a big part of that is, there was this formula of action, explosion, boom, some kind of a story, blah, 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 superhero, something. And, that would do $1 billion. And so investors are like, yeah, keep making that. But I would argue that the writing has gone downhill in a lot of this stuff, and it's become so formulaic and rote, and that's what the investors want from these films, that they become meaningless. And again, even if they're that, you're still running into the situation today where the average device that somebody has can offer a pretty decent experience. Might not be the experience the director envisioned, but it's an experience that lets you that really allows you to feel the content as much as you may want to. Okay. I'm not saying watching things on a phone screen is a great thing. I would never argue for that, but you can have a pretty great experience in your house. And actually Apple, I think, is a big part of behind this, of proving that with the Apple TV and just the insane quality of their content. Sometimes it looks better than almost anything I've ever seen in theaters. And sometimes it's the documentary shit that they do, and it looks that good. And so you can't even go to see that in theaters. And so a lot of people, I think there's a dramatic shift. This isn't even bringing up YouTube, right? The ultimate streaming service. But there's this dramatic shift in people's minds that if I want to see great content, it's in my living room or it's on my phone. It's not in a theater. And, over the years that has been slowly chipping away. That concept has been slowly chipping away. That reality really has been slowly chipping away at people's minds. So if streaming services are the way to go, then how do like, where does a movie fit into a streaming service? The reality is it doesn't fit very well, unless, it's some like rom-com or something that's really not that expensive to make. Okay. Or for right now, we still have stars who are kind of like legacy, these like legacy actors who still have name cachet, but they're going away. Like that's just going away. And even they know it, right? Matt Damon famously said there's no such thing as leading man in Hollywood anymore, and so on. But also you have in movies, like they are, if it's not those kinds of films, not rom-coms or, lower budget stuff, they're expensive to make. And when I say to make, I mean to make in the way that viewers have come to expect. Okay. You can make low budget films, sci-fi films that are really interesting with pretty good effects. You can do that. Okay. But, today people just expect everything to look real, and so unfortunately, there was a time I think where you could get away with not so great CGI, but that time is no longer today. So a lot of these smaller films, and especially ones that don't have any kind of name actor in them, they're going to have to get privately funded. They're not getting, or, Full Moon will have to make them or something. Like they're not going to get made by these streaming services. Conversely, the, big budget stuff, when a movie comes out on a streaming service, it's one and done. You watch it, it's over. That's it. You don't have to, and here's the key, you don't have to subscribe for another month to see it. Okay? As to where if instead of making a movie, you make it a TV series, right? With like 8 episodes, which could equal to, because the episode lengths can be variable, which can equal to really the ultimate length of a movie today, 3 hours plus or less, then, and that requires people to subscribe for at least 2 months, say, or 3, then you're going to make TV series, or maybe, they should more properly be called miniseries, is what they used to be. You're going to make that instead of an actual movie that people can just sit down, watch for 2-3 hours, and then they're done with it. You're going to make something that becomes an appointment for them and that they have to, keep subscribed to get it. And that's the reality of the business model of streaming. The purpose is not to make great art. Granted, that hasn't been Hollywood's purpose in a long time either, if ever. Okay. The purpose is to keep people subscribed. And so you will do whatever it takes to keep people subscribed. So the concept of a movie is antithetical in every way to the subscription streaming service model. And so if everything's going to streaming, if theaters are dying, then the movie dies with it. Because, once there's no more movies, theaters sure could just like keep playing old stuff. And I think there's value in that. And there's going to be a market for that. There always will be. There always has been. All right. But that's what Fathom Events is about and so many of these other companies. Okay. But this idea of the movie, it's not going to be a part of the program. And they don't really often, I think, call these things mini series either on streaming services, partly because if it does really well for them, it gets great download numbers and whatever. Don't call it a mini series because you'll want to do a season 2, which is really, it's not really a season 2. It's actually a sequel to the first film, and it's another film. And anyway, this is partly why if you watch, these shows today, and again, they are only like 8 episode seasons. Why is that? Why did the season numbers drop? Well, aside from syndication needs and, advertising dollars and all this stuff, part of the reason is really these things are being made like movies. They're not being made like TV shows. They have awkward moments where they stop. They have episodes that seem to have no beats to them. They're, all of this. It's because they're literally being made like films. They're not really TV series anymore. So the irony is we really have like a whole new animal now. And I know I haven't mentioned Max. I don't think we can call it HBO Max anymore, but whatever. The less I have to talk about that, the better. Just because it seems like the only thing it can really do is some kind of Game of Thrones nonsense, and it is just that nonsense. So, regardless, we have a new beast, and I guess you would just call it like maybe we should call it a streamer, or a streaming show or something like that. But like, they're not TV shows, not as we've known them for decades. They're not movies either. And again, the movie is really going to fall away. Um, Maybe they'll make movies here and there as like some kind of prestige piece or something along those lines. Maybe, but even that doesn't really exist anymore. But it's good. We're entering into a very interesting time where these formats of entertainment that we've had for a century, half a century, depending upon which one we're talking about, more than half a century actually for television. Um, they're dying. They're going away. And I don't know that they're ever going to come back. And it's kind of funny in one sense, and then we're going to get into Chick-fil-A. It's kind of funny in one sense because, in one sense, one of the things that always blew my mind when watching Star Trek growing up. So we're talking about real Star Trek, right? Star Trek The Next Generation. This could be just as true for the original series, of course, which is the best Star Trek. But Star Trek The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, all of it. One of the most amazing, except for Enterprise. That's a caveat here. One of the things that amazed me, that blew my mind about it, is that they don't watch TV. They don't watch movies. And I remember, for most of my life thinking, well, that's crazy. Like, like there's no way that they don't still watch TV shows and movies, even in the 24th century. Like, this is just part of what we do. But now, it actually makes all the sense in the world. I feel like Star Trek was wildly prescient in that idea that no, there won't be TV, there won't be movies. Who knows what there will be? There might not, and I mean, they barely even had YouTube. They certainly had a lot of home videos though, so maybe they still had something like that. But anyway, I do think that ended up becoming remarkably prescient of Star Trek as a whole, that these formats don't exist. Now, again, in Enterprise, yes, Trip Tucker would hold a movie night. Yeah, and in Voyager, he had Captain Proton and all that. So, I mean, there were homages to it in a way, but they're not something that was actively being made. Like on the NX-01, they were never watching a movie, like a new movie, right, from the, at that point, it'd be the 22nd century, right, 2158, 2159, and then into 60. So I guess now, like, again, I'm just not surprised by this. This is where we're at. We're entering a time where these, kind of dramatic formats don't exist, and there's some kind of like mishmash. It's like brunch between breakfast and lunch. It's something in the middle. And is that going to eventually fall away? Honestly, I think so as well, because I think that, what was that network? Quibi? I think that was something that was all short form content, but it was supposed to be like a television network, or as a streaming service, but it was all short form stuff. I think they were way ahead of their time. Like, they were ahead of TikTok in what they were thinking. They were ahead of a lot of this stuff, and we could get into a huge conversation around everything niching down, as in everything just becomes more and more and more niche the more content gets created. And that's something else as well to really talk about, is there's just too much stuff now. I mean, there's too many things. There's too much to read. There's too much to listen to. There's too much to watch. There's too much. It's endless. And you could say, well, yeah, but isn't that a good thing? Well, from one perspective, it's a good thing. On the other perspective, not so much, because if you're, say, the aforementioned Star Trek, if you're a huge fan of Star Trek, there is so much Star Trek, to take in now. And say you wanted to read it all, like, being into Star Trek could be a job, like a lifetime job. As to where, in the 90s when I was growing up, you could literally read, listen to, comic books, all of it, whatever, watch. You could see all of Star Trek and also read, see, and watch all of Babylon 5, and also see, read, and watch and listen to the soundtrack albums and whatever from Stargate SG-1. You could do it all. But now, like, forget it. There's just too much. So it's another sign of where, the ability to make money, I think, from artwork has, like, again, we've all become very niched down. Okay. And so you have to appeal to niches, but yes, you'll make money through that, but you can't do, you're not going to make money in the sense of like these big tentpole films and whatever, because people's interests, they want something that appeals more to their niche, not something that appeals to the lowest common denominator. So there's many, many reasons why I think, and again, and others, I know I'm not the only person predicting this, that the motion picture as we understand it, is going to die. It's a format that's just going to fall away. And it's a format that was designed to make money, sure, but ironically, the need to make money is actually what's going to kill it, thanks to streaming services. So where does Chick-fil-A fit into all this? That is the big question here. Well, the reality is, I think they're going to do exceptionally well. Like I said, just on everything niching down, okay? I think there is a niche, and maybe even a growing niche, for what would be called family content and potentially like Christian/religious content. Now, this isn't anything new, okay? There used to be like networks like the Trinity Broadcast Network, right? Like TBN, that was all Christian stuff, Christian talk shows, Christian variety shows, whatever, movies even. Yes, they would make movies. They'd have cartoons, TV shows, everything. Okay. And those would actually do fairly well. And if you don't believe me, look at the people who are on the screen. Holy hell. These people would do fairly well. Also, I mean, you have other, from speaking of niching down, from other Christian denominations like Seventh-day Adventists. I'm sure Mormons were doing the same thing, where they made their own content. They broadcast it over satellite all around the world. Okay. So what Chick-fil-A is doing isn't necessarily anything new. Like, there's nothing surprising about this. And also, it's a model that ultimately already can make some amount of money, right? Because those satellite networks did very well for themselves. TBN did very well for itself. Okay. Not that this is going to be, I don't think this is going to be some kind of like televangelist thing. I don't think they're going to be that crude, that open. All right. But I can get an idea of what kind of content they're really going to, to end up making. Okay. And like I said, there's a market for it. But that doesn't matter even if there is a market for it. And it doesn't matter if that market is that niche. Why? Because Chick-fil-A makes all the money in the world selling chicken sandwiches. Okay. This is why they're going to succeed, because they don't need to make the money that Paramount Plus does, that HBO Max does, that Hulu does. Okay, go down the list. They don't have to worry about it. They're in the same position as Amazon and Apple, where they make plenty of money. The streaming service is a side project. They make plenty of money elsewhere. So people thinking that, oh, this is going to fail and it's going to be cringe content, if you're anti-Christian or whatever, I think you're dead wrong. Really, I think you're so off base in thinking that. I think they're going to make very good content for their niche. I think that it's going to do exceptionally well, but also I don't think it has to do exceptionally well. Are there going to be some kind of like tax write-offs? Is there a tax play here to be had? Oh, I'm sure there's that as well. Okay. But ultimately, this is them. This is a company, really, this is them doing 21st century missionary work. And if they're really as hardcore Christian as they claim to be, this is like a moral imperative for them. And so they're not going to give this up, and they'll keep doing it. Now, like I said, the only thing is, I don't think most people truly understand how expensive it is to do the things that Netflix does. Okay. I don't think they understand how truly expensive it is. I mean, it's one thing to pay for content. It's a whole other thing to pay for delivering it. And I would argue that at scale, paying for delivering it is far more expensive than the content you make. So just offering it is the real expense. As to where, in the theater world, in the movie business, and as well as in the TV business, it was actually the inverse. The real money, I mean, transmitting TV, other than paying for your licenses and, some other taxes and whatever, that was incredibly inexpensive. And so you could put all of the money into the content. Probably why TV series and, movies and whatever else, and TV movies and miniseries were so fucking amazing. Before the shift to HD. And you can actually see, really, in my opinion, you can see where the model shifted when everything moved over to HD. And the only people making the great content were actually what at the time were, the subscription channels like Stars. And I wouldn't agree with HBO, but I get it, and so on. So my point is, this method of content delivery that is streaming itself is inherently expensive and flawed because of that. But Chick-fil-A has the fortuitousness of not needing to care how expensive that is, not ultimately. So even that, I think that they'll get past. I'm sure that they are going to work with there's actually a very large Christian entertainment industry. Now, right now, it gets out a lot of its content through, some like Christian television or, Christian cable networks, as well as, believe it or not, DVD sales, still a thing. Yes. And it's Christians buying them. Not all, because, man, you should see my physical disc collection. Anyway, so, it's out there, and they're going to partner with these people. And there's going to be, great deals brokered, and this is going to do insane money. And it has nothing to do with, the orange ass hat. Okay, before anybody says that, is there a rise in conservatism and Christianity in general happening right now in the 21st century? Sure, because there's people who believe they're wrong, but they believe that there's a meaning crisis, and they're finding their meaning in the most comfortable thing that they can find nearby them, and usually that's some kind of Christian church or a Bible, a book of 1,000 some odd pages that somehow claims that it can encapsulate the entire truth of the entire fucking universe somehow. Yeah. When people are looking for meaning, they're going to go the path of least resistance, and that is certainly Christianity. So is that happening? Of course it is. Is Chick-fil-A going to pander to that? Why not? Right? Do they need to? Doesn't matter. No, again, the ultimate thing to understand here is that the only companies outside of Netflix that are going to come out of these streaming wars that we're going through right now, the only ones that are going to come out of it alive are the ones who actually don't rely, again, besides Netflix, who don't rely on streaming revenue alone. They're the only ones that are going to pull this off. So we're in for a very interesting 5 to 10 years. I do think that it's going to be incredibly sad to see the cinematic experience and the movie film go away. These are things, movies have been such a core part of my existence, my whole existence. I can't even begin to describe how. And I know that's true for many of you. Fortunately, we've had thousands, and I mean that, thousands at least. I mean, maybe there's millions of films that have been made, but at the very least, there are thousands of them that are fucking great. And we get to enjoy those over and over again, as long as maybe you keep a local copy of it, whether it's a physical disc or something on your computer, by going to the public library, and you know what I mean by that, then you can enjoy it forever. And I think that's what we're going to have to do. And that's okay. It's like the great poetry, right? The great poetry is always there. Shakespeare's always there. And we can always go back to them and read them over and over and over again. Even though perhaps nothing is made quite like that today. So, as depressing as it may be, in some ways, it's actually kind of hopeful because that just means we don't have to deal with all these goddamn sequels and remakes and whatever other unoriginal nonsense that comes out of the absolutely unoriginal minds in Hollywood. I'll see all of you, on the other side. And if you've got comments, baby, get them in. Get them in on YouTube, right here, right underneath me. Or if you're listening to it on Spotify, get me on the comment section. Let's go. Tell me what you think about it. Tell me why you think the movie isn't going to disappear anytime soon. I want to hear your theories, and maybe I'll respond to them in a future Real-Time Sovryn. But for now, really, I will see you on the other side.